Hi, this is Joe and welcome back to the shop. We have some more Harbor Freight evaluations here today. Let's start out with these digital calipers. These are run right around $17. I've had 4 or 5 of these and they always break the same way. The little battery cover, there's used to be 2 little tabs on this little cover, and these tabs break off and then you either lose the cover or as you notice it doesn't slip on very well. Now I was going to 3D print some new ones of these, but then I started playing around with trying to get this cover back on, and if you look really closely, there's supposed to be a little track, or at least this cover is supposed to slide in a little track, and if you look real close, there really isn't a track there. There's a teeny bit of a track right here, but it's been bent down or pushed out of the way. So even if I printed a new cover with the tabs on here, it wouldn't mount very well. So I've been through 4 or 5 of these things, so they add up. I would recommend not purchasing this particular model. For $1 more, like right around $18, this is the newer version. One of the nicest features of this particular model is when you turn it on, you have your inch, your millimeter, and you also have, let's get this close here so you can see it, you also have a fractional display as well. I use these mostly for machining, so I don't use the fractional too terribly much. But one thing though, let's go back to inches here. If you notice the display, the first 2 zeros, 0.0, have much larger characters than the last 3. So again, I'm reading, doing machining work, I'm reading in thousandths of an inch and 10,000ths of an inch. And so this is just a personal thing with me, is these 2 large digits and the 3 smaller digits sort of drive me nuts. I like the other display where all the digits are pretty much the same size. But again, the cover, if you notice the cover of the battery, there is a distinct track here. They've redesigned the cover not to have the little tabs, okay, and the little cover slides in from the side instead of from top to bottom. So if you look, notice that isn't on completely. So if you make sure on this one that the little tabs go into the track, then this, I've had this quite a while and the cover hasn't come off. It works pretty well, again, for using a digital caliper to get some rough measurements. This one works pretty well. Again, the only thing I don't care for is it sort of takes me an extra second to read through the large digits and the small digits. So from now on, I'm not going to purchase these anymore. I'll probably pay $1 more and pick up the newer model. So let's put these off to the side. Another evaluation, I do a lot of welding, so I take a lot of these cheap vice grips, and as in this case, you'll notice I've welded a little arm on here, so I can mount this to a bracket and tighten this up, and I can now have a third hand kind of a hold. Now the problem with the Pittsburgh is, if you notice, there's a little slot right here in the end, and what that slot is, you're probably not going to see this on the inside. There's a little hook. This tab right here is a hook, and then if you notice, there's a hook here, and then there's a hole right here. There's a spring that stretches across here and here. Okay, so what happened? I've lost my spring. I don't have any more. I'm going to have to scrounge another spring. But what I would recommend doing is, these are okay. The quality is okay. They work well, really well for welding. But I'm always losing the springs on these. So what I've noticed is if you go in with the spring attached and you get yourself a little punch, and then you put your punch on that little tab, and then you punch that tab down to really hold that spring in place, then you're not going to lose the springs. They'll continue to function properly. So again, that's a way to salvage. Again, the Pittsburgh line is one of their cheaper lines, but again, for welding, they're great. Just make sure that you tap down that little tab so you won't keep on losing your spring. Okay? In one of my earlier videos, let's move on to something else here. I don't think I showed this. In one of my earlier videos, we did an evaluation of the Cheapo 499 drill bit grinder, and the result of this was a major fail. And I wanted to really notice the housing that holds the grinding stone is attached by these very tiny little tabs. Now if I hold this, watch what happens when I jiggle that. This here is the major reason that this drill grinding attachment here doesn't work real well. There's absolutely, there's a lot of flex in here, as you see, which then causes the stone to rock back and forth across the drill flute points. So again, I didn't show that in the video, but since we're covering fails here, I wanted to include that in this video. Okay, so let's move on to the next thing here. I used to buy a lot of these Harbor Freight magnetic bases, but I have since gone to an imitation of the Noga base, which is also a magnetic base. But these things are really cheap. They're like $12, almost $13. So what I do is I take, let me zoom out here so you can see what's going on. What I do is I went out and purchased a phone bracket. This was like $4 or $5, and I took the this magnetic base also comes with this little screw attachment here. Let's undo this. So what I did was I took the arm off of this magnetic base. I cut it off short. I have two of them. I have a longer one and I have a shorter one. I drilled a hole and I tapped it. And the nice thing is now is I do a lot of filming when I'm using things in the shop. So the nice thing about this is if I want to get a shot of me milling on the mill or turning on the lathe, I can put this, attach this to, again, some type of metal attachment there, and lock it down. And now I have a really nice camera mount. And again, this cost me about $5 for the camera mount, for the phone mount, and about $12 for the base. So that's really nice. I really like this. It works pretty well. I notice a lot of YouTubers use these magnetic bases, but I wanted to pass this on. You can put yourself together a really cheap one. A lot of the other guys get the Noga bases, and they're very expensive. They're like $60, $70, and then they put a camera attachment on them. So here's a way to do it really cheap. If you get a couple arms, you can have a long one and a short one for really close-up work, or if you need to get up high, you can put the long arm on. That's pretty nice. Okay, let's go on to another thing here. This is also a Harbor Freight. They have these 3-stone, a fine, a medium, and a coarse grit, and they're mounted on a a triangular piece here. Well, the other day I was monkeying around on the workbench here and accidentally knocked it off, and as you see, the result is that all my stones popped off. And if you look at the little triangle mounting pieces and feel the adhesive they're using on there, it's really a crappy adhesive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little box knife here. I'm going to scrape this cruddy glue off, clean it up with a little solvent or acetone, and then we're going to come in, and I have a hot glue gun, and we're going to hot glue that. So off camera, I'm going to clean these up, then get them all prepped. We're going to come back. We're going to glue the stones back on, put this thing back together. So if you happen to run across a similar situation, that way if it does break up on you, you can just reassemble it, put it back together, and keep on using it. I use this for not precision tools, but if I have to sharpen a knife or if I have to do a chisel or something, I have another fine stone that I use for if I'm taking a burr off of a turning tool or something like that. But for all around general sharpening and cleaning up, I use the Cheapo Harbor Freight, and it works really well. They last a fairly long time. So let's clean these up. I'll come back and then we'll reassemble that. After you put the first one on, then you have to do hot glue both sides, and then put the stone on before it gets too cold. So I have it now setting. For the last one, I have it setting in the rack here. And let's go ahead and do the last stone here. And again, we want to work sort of quick, because we don't want the first side to start setting up. So let's go over here very quickly and do the next one. And again, I'm putting this on pretty good here. So now let's go ahead and get the last stone, and let's set this on. And there we go. Okay, so we'll let this set up here. But as you can see, the stone is now back together. We can flip it around to whichever side we want. And I'm not going to try to knock it off the bench again to see if it's going to hold anymore, but I'm assuming it will because we put a lot of hot glue in there. So that's all I have for you this video. I'm in the process of doing some more mods on Harbor Freight items. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Any comments, please leave a comment. If you'd like to see anything tested or evaluated, just let me know in the comment section. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you next time.